Joining us right now is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas. Glad to have you on the show. Things got a little funky. Talking about bring the funk on Capitol Hill. Congresswoman Summer Lee, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, you got these Republicans who are acting a fool, talking about, oh, how oppressed they are as white men, and the things have just been so rough, Congresswoman. They're having a difficult time in this world because the oppression that they're facing. And then you got these commentators out there saying, see, right there. Congresswoman Crockett, she's the problem. That's the problem with these Democrats. They keep using this woke language, and this is why they're gonna keep losing.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I was watching commentary from the New Zealand Parliament, and there was a line that really caught me as they're having kind of this struggle as it relates to Indigenous people. And the line was, when you are accustomed to privilege, to then have to deal with equality makes you feel as if you are oppressed. And that line hit me so deep because that's exactly what it is. These are people that have enjoyed privilege their entire lives, whether they want to recognize it or not. And for literally everyone, because I kept saying, where's Byron? Where is Byron? Is Byron about to jump in this? Because I want to see what Byron has to say, because Byron served on the committee as well. But for some reason, Byron wasn't around to debate this particular bill being marked up. And the author of it, Representative Cloud out of Texas, was complaining that right now they are being oppressed. And then there was an issue with Higgins out of Louisiana, where he was arguing that he had been oppressed because Ayanna Pressley asked him to stop misusing the legacy of Martin Luther King and basically honor the wishes of Martin Luther King's family. And he said, see, y'all are trying to oppress me. You're trying to take away my First Amendment right. And it was just frustrating because they consistently use this language and they really don't understand what oppression is, or they want to pretend like they don't understand. And that's why I needed to make sure I reminded them of what Google has defined oppression as. And I'm sure any other reasonable dictionary defines oppression in a similar way. And they are not being oppressed. They are whining little men.
You mentioned New Zealand, of course, Parliament was temporarily shut down. This is what after Maori lawmakers performed a haka, a traditional dance demonstrating the community's anger over you talking about the treatment of indigenous people in that particular bill. Pull the audio up, y'all, real quick. Come on. Come on, I wish y'all break out in the haka on the floor of the House.
I don't necessarily see that happening, but there is this movement of the far right that we're experiencing right now where it's all about whitewashing. It's all about deleting. In fact, again, in that same scenario in New Zealand, they talked about the colonization. And one of the things that I wanted to make clear is that oppression looks like what my ancestors have endured, and they have nothing to reflect upon as it relates to their ancestors being oppressed in any way. If anything, they were the ones that were inflicting the oppression, at least their ancestors were. And that was why I wanted to remind them of that. But that's also why it's so dangerous that they want to delete Black history from our history books, because if you don't know your history, then you're doomed to repeat it. And when you see the likes of, say, a Byron Donalds out there who wants to glorify things such as Jim Crow, it is important that they recognize that there are those Black folk like me, like Rep. Ayanna Pressley, like Rep. Summer Lee, that will not allow them to delete us and delete our pain out of history and then decide to move forward and inflict more pain.
This was a study done from researchers at Tufts University School of Arts and Sciences and Harvard Business School, where we're at a point now where whites believe that they are the victims of racism more often than blacks. I talked about this in my book, White Fear, how the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds. I said in this book that we are living, I've been giving these speeches since 2009. And I was saying then, so the last 15 years I've been saying, we are living in this age of white minority resistance. We're living in this age where white Americans feel as if they are being discriminated against, they're being targeted, they're losing opportunities. So you got this DEI thing, you got all this sort of stuff like that. And they have created this hysteria that, oh my God, that their world is crumbling down. And then of course, then you got these Democrats we're spending too much time on identity politics. We're leaving these things behind. So you got Bernie Sanders, you got Chris Murphy, all these people. And what kills me is they act as if whiteness is not an identity. They act as if that's not real. And I sit here and so they're like, well, we need to get away from these things. And it's like, okay, and run to what? Because the reality is Donald Trump absolutely pressed the buttons of white identity. You look at the targeting of white men and males. Maleness is identity politics. And these white male Democrats, I'm like, I don't know what world they're living in where they can't see this, because for them, anything other than white is identity politics. But anything with them, oh, no, that's just politics.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. And it is important that we continue to make the record clear on who it is that's bringing this up. They continue to try to say it's the Democrats. We're not bringing this stuff up. Like, this was not a Democratic bill. This was a Republican bill that was being marked up. And I have every right to make sure that I challenge any bill that comes into my committee or any bill that comes on the floor. This wasn't us and something we initiated, but it is something that I felt very strongly about responding to and finishing, because it's just a bunch of games. And for those that are cowering and deciding that they are okay with towing the Republican line to where they are going to whitewash us, I have news for you. If you are a Democrat, it has been people of color that have held you down in your seat. That is for sure. Every single Democratic seat that you look at, 9 times out of 10, there is a person of color demographic that is holding that district down and making sure that it's Democratic. So, when you're out there and you're saying that you're going to represent your constituency, it's not just the people that look like you. It's your entire constituency. And I try to do that every day that I'm in the House. But the reality is that just seeking equity should not be a problem in the land of the free and the land of opportunity. Acknowledging that there were wrongs that were done to people like me, to the extent that, yes, I am sitting in Congress. And so, yes, I have made it further than I could say the average Black woman, specifically when it comes to politics, knowing that I'm only the 55th Black woman to ever swear into Congress. But that doesn't mean that there aren't obstacles that exist because of the kind of built-in systemic issues that we have. And you can't start to fix systems if you decide that you're going to ignore that there's a problem. If there's no problem, there's nothing to be fixed. So the fact that they are trying to roll back the hands of time, and they said that this was all because they wanted to make sure that the most qualified people are working in our federal government, and I applaud my coworkers, especially Melanie Stansbury, who made a very good point of pointing out that Donald Trump is definitely not concerned about qualifications. when we look at the people that are being put into position. And I even made the point yesterday, and I said, I can't say that I agree with Senator Scott on anything. I can't say that I agree with Byron Donalds on anything, but I can tell you this. Those two black men are more qualified to serve in some capacity in the Trump administration than the random people that Trump has decided to empower. But one thing is different about them, and is that they're black. And that is what diversity, equity, and inclusion seeks to get rid of, is this idea that if it's white, then it's always right. But to absolutely say, we will at least give a look to somebody who is different. And what they failed to really talk about in that hearing is that diversity is defined the way in that particular bill in such a way that veterans are diverse, in such a way that it's including your sexual orientation, it's including your sex, it's including all these things, but it's not just race. It goes down to your religious background. It's talking about diversity as a whole. And they didn't want to talk about that. So there actually potentially will be a negative impact specifically on our veterans, because a lot of our agencies look at your service as a veteran, and they look at that, and that helps you out when it comes time to earn a position in the federal government. And now they don't even want to do that. And these are people that risk their lives to make sure that we can maintain freedom in this country.
Does it frustrate you when these DEI debates and discussions are being held and white women are silent? Because the fact that the numbers don't lie.
They benefit the most.
White women are the greatest beneficiary of affirmative action, of DEI, of diversity than anybody in America. No, white women.
Yeah.
When you look at contracts, they say MWBE. If you are a black woman, you go in the black category. If you are Latina, you go in the Latino category. That W should be WW, white women. They are silent. And these Republican white women, these Democratic white women, these independent white women, and they sitting here the ones making all the money from DEI, the corporate jobs, the CEOs, they ain't saying nothing. And that's I keep saying that, they got to be called out. You got to be say, hey, Representative so-and-so, you going to get in this? Hey, Representative so-and-so, you know white women who have city, county, state, federal contracts. That's DEI. Why y'all silent?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I didn't have enough time, but that was one of the points that I was going to make, is that white women are the greatest beneficiaries of DEI. And so when you're talking about DEI hires, they always try to use it as a slur against black folk, to be perfectly honest. But the reality is that DEI is a lot deeper than that. That's why I went into all the categories that are classified as diverse. But white women, again, we're not engaged in this debate. This debate, everything that I can remember, and I haven't played it back, it was nothing but the white men on the Republican side that were arguing for this. Now, they all voted for it, for sure, but they did not get engaged in the debate whatsoever on their side of the aisle. Everyone of all backgrounds was engaged in this fight as it relates to the Democrats. I really wish we would focus on the things that could actually bring us together in this country, and the things that would actually solve some of the issues that we really need. Unfortunately, I don't know if the American people just weren't aware or just didn't care, to the extent that we now ended up with a Trump trifecta, where we will end up with more of this in attempt to delete and misuse and water down the legacy of Martin Luther King, and use his words as reasoning and rationale for absolutely eviscerating his legacy. That's what we're dealing with right now, is a bunch of folk that were supported by white supremacists, that have a white supremacist agenda, whether we're talking about the actions that they will bring forth in Project 2025 that we constantly try to warn people about, that people said, well, he said he ain't got nothing to do with that. As of now, I think at least 2 of his nominees were authors of Project 2025. So, I don't know why people ignored us or didn't want to believe us or what the case was, but it's time to buckle up.
So I'd love to get your perspective on this here because this has sort of been getting on my damn nerves. Ever since the election, you've got your fellow Democrats. Everybody's weighing in on why Vice President Kamala Harris lost and so things like that. So this is journalist Matt Iglesias. He goes, because he was asked, somebody said, just once, I would love people who say these things to be specific about what exactly would mean to, quote, abandon identity politics. He goes, one salient example of identity politics that hurt Democrats recently was the decision in 2020 to make Kamala Harris the VP nominee, despite her poor electoral track record and unimpressive performance on the campaign trail because Biden needed to pick a black woman. Now, I'm gonna show you this second tweet. This is Chris Murphy of Connecticut. He goes, of the 20 highest median income states, Democrats won 18 of them. Of the 20 lowest medium income states, Democrats won 3. Yes, race and gender play a big role in politics, but the hard truth is Democrats clearly aren't listening to the people we say we fight for. So I want to go back to the first one. That is what Matt Iglesias had to say. Here's what I find to be very interesting, Congresswoman, since Matt desires a salient example of identity politics. In 2008, there was a guy who ran for president. His name was Senator Barack Obama. In 2008, there was a guy who ran for president. His name was Senator Joe Biden. This is the same Senator Joe Biden who ran twice previously for president and failed miserably. He had, quote, go back to the tweet, he had a poor electoral track record. He was unimpressed. He did an unimpressive performance on the campaign trail. But in 2008, Obama secured the nomination. And do you know what all the talk was in D.C.? Obama's going to need to pick a white man who can talk to those Rust Belt white people. And so he needs to pick somebody who has serious foreign policy experience. So who does he pick? He picked old Joe, a white man. What's interesting is that Matt Iglesias asks if Joe Biden was not unimpressive in running for president. Mm-hmm. Sure, he was reelected as a senator, Vice President Kamala Harris, but she was elected as a senator from California. But people actually said Obama needed to pick a white man. He picked a white man. But Matt, it's amazing how Matt and other Democrats act as if his white male identity politics, that didn't exist, that it was identity politics. And then Chris Murphy talks about these states, these low states, they're red states. Democrats, please show. Democrats passed the Affordable Care Act. Who has that helped more? Broke people in red states. Who has benefited more? White men in red states because of health care. When you look at the economic policies, that's helped those people in the red states. So I'm trying to understand, maybe you can help me, whether it's Murphy or Bernie Sanders and others, explain to me how we have to do better to working class people. Show me where the policies aren't helping them. They're not voting because of the policies. They're voting because of culture.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, when you ask people, tell me exactly which economic policy Trump proposed that most impresses you, they can't answer that question. And like I know, that I traveled the entire country. And so this wasn't about this. And I kept telling people, I remember the last church that I visited in Atlanta, Georgia, and I said, this is going to be a vibes election because if you want policy, she's got it. If you want policy from him, he's got concepts of policies or he's got Project 2025, but he doesn't have the policies. And the interesting point that you just made is that in those states where they are thriving economically, they are democratically run. So yes, Louisiana is constantly having a problem. Mississippi, Alabama, and Republicans run everything. And they are the ones that are broke. They are the ones that are lacking in healthcare. And honestly, these blue states that people complain about are the ones that are carrying them on their back. So, listen, for everybody that wants to talk about states' rights, I thought that it was an interesting move that the governor in California decided to make, where he said, I'm going to call a special session. We going to keep our coins here because guess what? California got a lot of money. California contributes to take care of these other states that ain't got no people and consistently put people in based upon, oh, you know what? Well, we are the party of religion. No, y'all not. Have you seen the top of your ticket? Have you seen his nominees? I mean, he's got at least 3 people that he nominated that have sexual assault allegations in some way around them, including his own sexual misconduct situation. So no, don't preach to me about religion. And as I try to tell people all the time, if you religion, go to church, but don't try to find it in your politician because that's not our job. And this is coming from somebody that is the child of a preacher. I will tell you that if I had to assess anything, it is our communication. People don't know what we're doing, number one. So, it's kind of like the fact that people felt as if Trump cared about them when it came down to the stimulus checks. They thought that that was Trump. That was a failure of communication on our part. The fact that people don't truly understand who has the power of the person, how these things work, that is a problem that we have on education. So we've got to do better. And we can't just come out at election time and try to educate people. We've got to consistently educate them. We've got to consistently call them out immediately when things happen. And we also have to say, when it is a culture war, let me redirect you because they decided that they were going to distract you, and make sure that you're pointing that out. But listen, here's the deal. I consistently heard on the trail, well, he's a businessman and he's strong. Those are the 2 things people would say. They would tell us Democrats are weak, and they felt like he was strong and that he was going to fix whatever pain they were feeling economically because he's rich. He's a businessman. Well, this is a brand that he's been building way before he ever ran for the presidency. And so it is hard to overcome that because he had a solid brand that people bought into, and they also believe that he's authentic. All the gaffes and nonsense that he was making, they were like, oh, at least we know what we're getting with him. He's real. They felt as if they did not know the vice president because even though she had been elected and had a great track record, she only had 107 days to brand herself outside of being Joe's vice president. And so people don't understand how difficult it is to kind of overcome some of that. I did hope that with everything that he was doing, that people would say, and with him being very clear about where he was with Roe and that kind of stuff, that people would say, you know what, I got to get out and I got to vote against him. But a lot of people decided to stay at home. And it's unfortunate because we all are about to feel the effects of that.
Absolutely. You ran for the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, lost to Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. That to me is a part of this. Communication is critically important. You're absolutely right. I said for 3 years all the 4 years that the administration was doing a horrible communicating policy. They were passing things, not talking about it. Not only that, amazing work happening when it comes to criminal justice reform in the Department of Justice. I said to Karine Jean-Pierre directly, to the chief of staff of Biden, I said, how do y'all never even bring this stuff up from the White House podium? And so it was just crazy. And I really do hope that the House Democratic Caucus listens to you. And again, I get this is nothing. I got great respect for Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. But here's the reality. I've never been contacted by her office. Never. My whole deal is if you're trying to communicate, stop only talking to MSNBC. You got to be everywhere. You got to be on cable news. You got to be on digital shows. You got to be on podcasts. You have to be you have to be in a constant messaging mode. And I said to the campaign, I said January to July should be education, information, education stage, enlightenment stage, informative stage, because folk don't know what you did. And you can't wait to the last minute and think a 30-second commercial actually going to do it. Real quick, questions from panel. I need short questions from each panelist. Kelly, you go first.
Sure. So we can talk about policy all day, right? And I've seen you on panels. I saw you at CBC. I saw you at Urban League and the like. And I absolutely adore you. Like I watch all your clips and all those things. So this is my favorite
Question, Kelly.
for a second.
I got to get to that question, Kelly.
I know. Real quick. As far as even with Roland's shirt, it said, I already did my job. Get somebody else to do it. That kind of vein of thinking. As a Black woman in this political space, how are you encouraging yourself to keep going? And what do you recommend for Black women such as myself who, frankly, we're tired? I feel like we did our job. What else you got for us? Get somebody else to do it. How do you encourage that line of thinking as well?
Yeah, so, Roland started this off by talking about the fact that I did run for DPCC chair. And this was really to stretch my caucus because the times are different. A lot of my colleagues said, they had committed to Debbie 2 months ago. 2 months ago, as I explained in my speech, because I took all the time to really talk about what I was doing, I was actually traversing the country and trying to do everything that I could to make sure I could save democracy. I had raised over $4 million for this caucus. The raised goal as freshman leadership representative was $500,000, so I raised 8 times as much money as required. I made sure I gave out close to $400,000 or more to frontliners or red to bluers, either directly for myself or I raised for them, and I gave the caucus approximately $200,000 myself. So I was not sleeping. I was working. I was not seeking a position. And I think that we do get into this rut sometimes, specifically within kind of the party structure, where it's like, well, let's just kind of keep doing what we've been doing versus kind of challenging ourselves to kind of think a little differently. I also did not know, going more so to your point, how much I really was willing to do. I needed to take some time after the election and reflect. And the vice president called me about 2 or 3 days after the election. And she did what she always does. As difficult as it was for me to get out of bed, she was the one that reminded me of why I do this work. I don't do this work for me. I do it for the people that I serve. And so while I think that it is important that Black women take our rest, we rejuvenate, and we decide how we want to move forward, I think that at the end of the day, we have been so loyal because we know that the stakes are just too high. We know that we want better for our families, and this is what it looks like. It looks like us doing the heavy lifting. But I definitely believe that we've got to take our rest. But when I look for inspiration, I think about the college girls that were texting me, DMing me, saying how much they look up to me, the itty bitty girls that for whatever reason know my name and show up in the Capitol. And I think it's never been about me. It's been about the future generations and really wanting more for them. But it's important that we get our rest and we decide how we want to move going forward. And I think it is going to be important that we harness our power collectively and make demands and say, if you want us to work for you, these are the things that we're going to need in return, because we will have to have some assurances before we go out and break our backs again.
Matt?
Yeah, so Congresswoman, you're incredible. It's amazing to see the work you've done. My question for you is, what is the most pressing legislative issue for you at the start of the new Congress? What are you, hitting the ground running on legislatively?
If I'm being real with you, I don't anticipate we're going to have too many legislative wins coming out of a Trump trifecta. I mean, we know that this has been the most unproductive Congress in the history of the Congress, and they only had one lever of control. It looks like the majority that the Republicans will have upcoming Congress is going to be even slimmer. So we're really going to be on defense. The things that we really need to get done are things such as the Farm Bill, because we're now 2 years behind. But I don't anticipate anything good for us. So at least I know SNAP benefits are safe so long as a Farm Bill has not gone through. But we definitely need to make sure that we're supporting our farmers so that they can hold on to their farms, so that we are not importing all of our food. That is a really big issue for me, considering that we have so many in this country that are already food insecure. Other than that, we're going to have, a few of our yearly must pass things. I am concerned about whether or not the government will shut down, because we know the last time that the government shut down, it was when Trump had the presidency. That will be devastating for us if he does shut us down. So for the most part, it's just a matter of playing defense. Obviously, if we were looking at Democrats being in control, repro would be at the top of the list. Voting rights would be at the top of the list. Criminal justice reform would be at the top of the list. I am hoping that in the lame duck, there is a letter that we're about to send to the president requesting that anyone who is currently incarcerated under the 18-to-1 disparity as it relates to crack cocaine, hoping that the president will commute those sentences so that those that are still sitting there under those disparities, that they can be recalculated to the 1-to-1. That is something that this AG, as it relates to his prosecutions, it was always 1-for-1. So we're hoping that we can do that and get some folk out of prison that have been sitting way too long, and reduce the sentences of others. We know the numbers. We worked with the Sentencing Commission to get the numbers. We know how many how many people would actually come home. So we are about to push it out, and we hope to get the support of the president. I did have an opportunity to sit down with the Attorney General sometime before the election to talk about this being something that I really wanted to push for in the lame duck. So that's really kind of like my one big Hail Mary that I'm trying to make sure we can throw. But that's obviously before January. Come January, it's just going to be defense.
Michael.
Representative Jasmine Crockett, could you please explain briefly what the Dismantle DEI bill of 2024 is? Because according to USA Today, if it became law, it would effectively close all federal DEI offices and eliminate federal DEI programs. We know that's part of Project 2025. Also, how are these white men on the committee defining the term woke? I hear them use the term woke, but they never define it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And great job in the committee educating them.
Thank you. They definitely don't have a definition of woke. As far as I'm concerned, if it's the opposite of what they want, then they consider it woke. As it relates to the bill, you're absolutely right. So when we start to talk about programs within various schools, whether it's, I was looking at a portion of the bill that talked about kind of how they're encouraging in the healthcare space there to be more diversity. And we obviously already are in a great shortage as it relates to healthcare because of COVID-19. It would remove all funding that would help those that are historically disadvantaged from being able to get funds that would help them to potentially, be able to pursue their education. There was an amendment that specifically was put in by Rep. Presley that was specifically put in to make sure that HBCUs would not be defunded under this. Oddly enough, it did pass unanimously. So that was thrown in there because theoretically that could happen. Also, there's a provision that prevents someone who's been in any of these offices from transferring to another office. So if you ever worked in a diversity, equity, and inclusion office, then you would be prevented from transferring to another governmental kind of agency. Usually, if something gets shut down, then you have protections that allow you to go and transfer somewhere else. But basically, any funding that in any way is attempting to increase diversity in the federal government, it would be gone, as well as any positions, as well as the data showing us, this is how many, I want to say it was the FBI, how they now have to report the encounters, or at least keep track of the encounters and things like that. It will get rid of all of that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then. Well, Congresswoman Crockett, listen, Thanksgiving's coming up. Get some rest. Enjoy the fam. And then, of course, got Christmas happening December. There's work that still can be done. And you're right, come January 20th, we are going to be in a state of war, battling folks who want to dismantle everything. And what I keep telling people, look, focus on that, build locally, and then also focus on 2026, because you can stop that nonsense in 2026 by voting the right way. So get rest, but also we got to stay focused and get to work.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free to download, free to use, next generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you help build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation 8 crowdfund on Start Engine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.